Hello my friends, today I'm just going to mix up some soil. I take my native soil, which is really terrible silt, alkaline, gray, crumbly, clumps up into big clumps. It's terrible soil. But I'll show you how to turn that into great gardening soil that produces huge crops of stuff here. But yeah, so this will be a video on how to incorporate biochar into your gardening soil, and for an example I'll just show you how I take my natural soil I find here in my yard, which isn't very good at all for growing vegetables, and turn it into something quite awesome. So come along and I'll show you how to do this. Alright, well, here's the soil I'm using. This is what I've dug out of the raised beds when I'm building them. I just dig out as far down as the topsoil goes until there's a hard packed layer. I try not to get too much of that because as you can see, the topsoil doesn't look too great to begin with. It's really full of crumbly rock like this. Silt mostly, a little tiny bit of clay, not too much sand. And then it comes down to a layer. This is the hard packed silt. Crumbles into dust. That's the topsoil. You go deeper, some places it's only an inch maybe. Up here where I'm gardening, it's maybe 3-4 inches at the deepest. So yeah, it's not the greatest soil to begin with. I'll show you how to take this and turn it into something good. So to my native soil, I'll be adding biochar. This is going to be a key ingredient in making good garden soil. It's going to change the texture and quality of the soil. As you saw, it was crumbly and turning to dust and just looks terrible. This is going to turn into something that looks completely different. It's going to feel different and it's going to behave differently. So right here is the rough mix of biochar. It's been charged with compost tea. That's what's in that jug there. And I smash it up with the sledgehammer in a container, run it through a screen. I get a nice fine mix. This is what I'll be adding to the soil. This is the second of 3 ingredients versus the soil. And you can use any soil, as I'll show you. Mine is pretty terrible example, so it's a good example. Terrible soil, I mean. It's a good example of how this can improve any soil. Okay, so this is the second ingredient, and the third ingredient is just going to be some organic matter. That could be your compost, your kitchen compost. I use a cold compost, fungal dominated compost, and I'll take you over and show you that. Alright, this is my leaf and grass mulch pile. I just throw up the lawn clippings and whatever else I have into a pile, and a cold compost down with a lot of fungus in here. A lot of mycelium running through it all. It's late in the season, it's in September already, so normally I would dig out the bottom of it to use. Right, this is older stuff there, but frogs and little critters go in there for the winter. So I find after beginning of September I stop digging down in the stuff. So I just filled a 5-gallon bucket, because I'm going to use a wheelbarrow to do my soil mix as an example for you guys. And all I'll need is about a 5-gallon bucket to fill a wheelbarrow of soil there to mix in with it. And what I've done here is just dig into it. And what you got here, you should see, if you see that coming off, that's all like spores and mold. It's starting to break down. Doesn't, of course, look like what comes out of your hot kitchen compost. It was broken down pretty good. And it's full of mycelium and fungus, lots of spores in here. So this is going to inoculate the soil. And you see all that, it's not dust coming off there, that's all spores, mold spores. Not good for your allergies. Don't try this at home if you have allergies. But yeah, this is going to serve a few purposes here. Of course, all good soil needs organic matter, you know, in it. But this isn't the primary reason I'm using compost. It's for feeding the worms. And as it breaks down, it's going to continue to add nutrients to the biochar. So with the biochar in the soil, if the biochar is charged, the compost and how much compost you have to put in each year is severely reduced. All I do is add some when I first make the soil mix, and then I just mulch the beds after in the fall, or keep the mulch through the summer depending on what's growing in them. And that's sufficient to maintain some fresh organic matter in the soil and feed the worms. But as far as organic matter in the soil is concerned, if you add biochar, you have permanent organic matter, because what they mean by having organic matter is a high carbon composition, and biochar is pure carbon, or nearly pure carbon. So you're adding a huge percentage of carbon to your soil with biochar, almost making adding compost. You certainly won't need to be continually adding compost every year in large amounts and working into your soil. Putting a mulch layer on top should be sufficient. So let's take this bucket of fungal dominated cold compost over to the wheelbarrow, and I'll show you how I work and then mix my soils. Alright, so I got my wheelbarrow, and on top of the wheelbarrow I have a frame with a piece of hardware cloth. This is 1/4-inch hardware cloth. I run my soil, the biochar, and if you want you can run your compost through it also. It's great and handy. It's simply made. It's just 2 pieces of wood, the length that you want the side of it, or as long as hardware cloth comes, right? And then I just screw the hardware cloth down between 2 pieces of wood on each side, and yeah, it's very handy. So I'll show you what I'm doing here. This is my native soil mix. This is what passes for topsoil in my yard. I'm just shoveling it up on here. You choke up on the grip the shovel down by the blade. It's like pretty effortless. So yeah, I'm just going to run through this. We'll take out any roots or rocks, or just break up the large clumps. There's large clumps of silt, even a few clumps of clay here and there. It's also good for getting out all the roots of weeds and such. I'll try to find some of that. Here's some more freshly dug stuff still growing in it. So what I do, you don't have to do this in a wheelbarrow. You don't have to use the same hardware cloth. Get something to break up your soil with. You mix it on the ground. I like the wheelbarrow, and I can mix the soil right where the source is and then move it to wherever I need it easily. I used to make a big pile and mix it all on the ground and shovel it back. Then I just find myself shoveling more and more. Yeah, that's all there is to it. Break these larger chunks down with the shovel. Use all the roots, all the plants, everything you don't want. Just, take the weeds out. That's about it. I usually do about half a dozen shovelfuls, and then I mix some biochar in with it. But this is my soil. It's gray. When it dries out, it just turns to dust. Now I've already got the biochar smashed up, or else I would just run it also through the screen like that, if you don't have any prepared. So I got about three good shovelfuls, maybe to every 6 or 8 shovelfuls of dirt. It's better to have too much than not enough. Then you just want to mix it in, almost like you're baking something. I find it's pretty easy to use your hands. I'm going to turn it in. Now you're going to see by doing this, the texture of the soil will start to change. It'll be quite different with the biochar mixed in. Well, because it is very heavy silt content to the soil. It's mostly silt. I'm going to add a lot of biochar because these pieces are going to be larger and they will attach to all the smaller particles of silt. Help prevent the silt from bunching back up into clumps. Now, how much do you need? What's the percentage? It's really going to depend on your soil type. You know, some people with really nice fertile topsoils say it's unnecessary, you don't need it at all. I'm convinced it will help any condition. But if you are going to use biochar, and you do want to add it to your soil, this is the best way to do it. Just make sure it's stirred in really good right to start with. Okay, so I'm at about 4 shovelfuls now. Not really full ones, and that's the broken up biochar too. I can already tell it's starting to get a darker look, almost as if it's been wetted down. This soil is dry, and you saw it, it was all gray. And what I'm doing here is just kind of looking for the grayish pockets, lighter colors. But yeah, that's all there is to it. That should be plenty. Now this soil has a much different texture. Okay, this is what I started with. And this is what I ended up with. All that dust coming off and everything. I'm physically changing the character of the soil just by adding in the charcoal. This is why I added it in first. so you can see with your own eyes what difference it makes. You know, you can add in compost, makes your soil look great. The next year that compost is gone, this biochar is going to stay in here. This soil is going to be nice and loose, great for planting seeds into, and great for growing your plants in. Now once you have the biochar mixed in well and you're satisfied you have enough in there, like I said, it's better to have too much than not enough. And a big mistake people make when using biochar is not properly incorporated into the soil. That's why I'm using my hands and I'm mixing it right in there, making sure it's all evenly mixed. Some baking bread or something. Now normally I would use 5-gallon pail compost to fill a full mix with a full wheelbarrow, but here I only have half of a wheelbarrow full, so I'm just gonna mix in half of a bucket. And again, all that dust rising you see, it's all spores from the fungus and molds that are growing, the grass mold and leaf fungus. This is grass and leaf mulch. Now you can run your compost through the 1/4-inch screen I have here. We'll go through that. You can force it through, make it wet if you have to. If it's loose like the stuff I have, wet it down and just mush it through. It does go through. I would only do that if I'm going to plant some fresh seeds like some carrots or something and I needed to put a layer of soil on top, or it was a fresh new bed. But it's fall and this is going to be a rough mix. So I'm not too worried about how well I mix the compost in. Again, this is only mostly to feed the worms and attract, inoculate the soil with fungus. So that's why I'm using a cold compost, not a hot compost or a manure, is because I'm not looking to add nutrients to the soil. The biochar will do that. It's charged with compost tea. It's very nutritious, more concentrated than any amount of manure or something you can shovel in there. So I'm just gonna roughly mix this around. As you can see, just a half a 5-gallon bucket. Adds quite a bit of volume to the soil. If I had dug out of the bottom of the pile, it would look a little darker and would more closely resemble soil. But yeah, that's ready to be thrown on bed. You can plant right into something like this, no problem. All this leaf and grass will get eaten by the worms. You have a nice vermiculture thing going on. So yeah, there it is, ready to use. I'm going to shovel this into one of my beds that I'm filling up. Here's the bed I'm filling in. I'm going to shovel this in here so you can see that this is indeed the same soil mix I use in all my garden beds. This took only a few minutes to mix. You know, it's always important to When working with biochar, one thing I forgot to mention was make sure you're not inhaling any of the dust. So even if it's mixed into the soil like this and you're getting a bunch of dust off of it, it's better safe than sorry. You slap on a mask real quick while you're working with it. Breathing in the carbon will cause you trouble. But yeah, it's as simple as that. All my raised beds are filled this way for free. Just a little bit of effort. Most of the effort's just in the making it a biochar, which really isn't hard, and is a great way to get rid of yard waste and even kitchen waste and stuff. But yeah, just a quick look, maybe not so quick, how I mix my soil for my raised garden beds for free. And I turn really terrible soil. Here, I'll shovel some out of this other garden bed to show you. Got nice rich soil, and this is dry too. I don't know where the shovel is in the camera, but yeah, instead of my other bed. You can see the orange splotches were fungus and all kinds of stuff growing in there. It's really easy to do. Save you a lot of money on buying soil or manure or whatever. I mean, if you have those things on hand, use them. But I have really terrible soil. I couldn't afford to amend it all every year, so I had to find a solution. And over the last, I don't know, about 10 years, this is what I've come up with. Well-made, well-charged, well-integrated biochar. Leaf and grass mulch, cold composted with lots of fungus in it, and my native soil. When I finish filling the bed, I'll mulch it over and keep it mulched unless I'm planting seeds into it, direct sowing. And then I'll remove the mulch and direct sow and replace the mulch either when the plants are large enough or at the end of the season. And that replenishes whatever nutrients the bed needs. I've yet to fertilize any of my beds. I use compost tea, but it goes a couple times when I plant some plants in, one watering with compost tea, and most of it all goes onto my biochar. But yeah, hope this was helpful a little bit. Well, that was a look at how I make my soil mix, how I incorporate biochar into the mix, and then how I use the mix in my garden. I use it to fill my raised beds. I use the same mix for container gardening, potatoes and such this summer. And yeah, so if you found that helpful or interesting at all, or you have some questions, please leave a comment. Please consider subscribing and join me here on the channel as a friend. Love to have you all. People who return video after the next are more than welcome. And yeah, if you found this at all helpful, give it a like. And hope you're doing well wherever you are, whenever you watch this. Peace!